One of my absolute favourite videos that I've made in a long time recently was Ben 10 as a horror story. And even if that video didn't quite get the reception I wanted it to, the world I built out for it I loved so much, and I just started imagining all the different Ben 10 characters that would fit into it. And so I've decided to call this series Ben 10 Alpha. Kind of going with the absolute Ben 10 route, but since that's already been made, I've leaned into more of the absolute Batman route where I just make it absolutely terrifying. We're starting off with what might be the scariest drawing I've ever done, which is Alpha Kevin 11, or Kevin 11 in this Ben 10 Alpha universe. Let's get into the lore now. Kevin 11 was a young child by the age of 12 who had a mutant ability awakened inside him. It had been there from birth, but he had only discovered it then. He became ravenous, craving a sort of energy he didn't even understand. He, in his small town in America, killed all 100 people inside it. With every person he killed, he would absorb their energy so that their bodies would be a husk of flesh on the ground. And this would warp him. He would not only gain the stature of a full-grown adult, but his jaw would unhinge, becoming unable to close. He would get taller and leaner, and eventually he would be captured by police, not after absorbing all the energy. He was absorbing the very life force from the people he killed, and every time he did it, it just made him enjoy it more. He was taken into a psych ward, but recently escaped, and discovered a news report about the so-called hero, Ben Tennyson, the child of a mysterious object lodged in their arm that gave them the ability to transform into multiple life forms. The very sight of this being with all that life force within him, 10 as was seen by the media, made Kevin foam at the mouth. And after he escaped, he immediately went to go devour Ben and all of his life force. This version of Conduit Edwards, an operative working for the CIA, was one of the people involved in erasing the memories of all the civilians who had witnessed the eventual confrontation between Ben and this new amalgam monster that is Kevin. Obviously, I haven't actually planned out that confrontation yet. I do plan to tell more stories in this universe, actually in the style of that first episode, but obviously Ben's not going to die that early. Sure, he might get injured or something, or he might lose one of his aliens, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, he was involved in erasing the memories of all people who had seen it, but he had a secret. He worshipped a being called the Dagon, and it gave him the ability to, whenever he erased somebody's memory, implant a curse within them, so that whenever he wanted, even remotely, he could transform them into a horrific beast known as an esoterica. He would use these for his own nefarious purposes, to try and finally help the extra-dimensional force that he worshipped seep into our world. Not connected to this character's lore, but I did want to make sure you all knew none of this is set in stone. I do plan on exploring this universe further, and none of this is confirmed. The next story coming up and the Kevin 11 one at the start are the ones I'm pretty much certain on. But for example, with this character, the only part I'm really certain on is that they work for the CIA, and when they erase people's memories, they somehow turn them into esoterica. What I've proposed apart from that, which I'll be honest isn't much, will probably stay, but no promises. In this universe, the Galvan are a galactic nightmarish species that feed on negative emotions. They are also shapeshifters, and for a Galvan to prove themselves, they will go onto an unsuspecting planet and will not stop until they have killed every being on that planet. They do not eat like the rest of us, regular food to sustain themselves. As I said, they live only on negative emotions. Once they have had enough of this, they will lay a frog spawn-like embryo into the minds of other beings, and these will then burst out of their skull into another of the destructive Galvins. When they scour worlds, killing every single being on it, they will also absorb the DNA of the beings they've killed, and they will use this to create beasts of pure negative emotions, which will erupt from the Galvin's own form, but they will promptly heal from this. Many Galvins gain the negative emotions they sustain themselves from in different ways. Some prefer to terrorize specific beings, others prefer to do it from afar, feeding through these beasts they create. But they are always a problem for the universe. They do not even have a homeworld, their shape-shifting ability allowing them to drift through space without dying. One of these such Galvin was named Azimuth, and he and his group of other such beings were involved in a sick, cruel, destructive game. You see, they were all inventors, creating technology that would sustain themselves on the negative emotions that they craved for. You see, their plan was to create devices to go after Max Tennyson. During his time in the war, it's unknown why they chose him, but his fearless nature meant that the devices could never use his negative emotions to track him down, due to his army training. Unfortunately, however, one of these devices intended to be finally sent to Max, being perfected to go after his limited negative emotions, was attracted to a different source, somebody near Max with much increased negative emotions, Ben. As you know if you saw my previous episode, Ben gained the Omnitrix, and Max and Gwen would both die soon after, to the hands of a machine. Most of the people partaking in this game stopped Ben, but Azimuth saw an opportunity. Since this boy had such heightened negative emotions, he could feed off them for a long time, and so he used his ability to create beasts of negative emotions to create Xylene, a beast of pure negative emotions, and he sent the beast to Earth to go terrorize Ben and feast off his negative emotions, transporting the sustenance to their master, the corrupt Galvin, Azimuth. Dr. Anemo in this universe, or should I say Dr. Anemo Tennyson, is much removed from his original counterpart. You see, he is Ben's father, and although not being very good in the role, unknown to Ben, he did actually care a fair amount for his son. So when his son was presumed dead and put all over the news after he gained the Omnitrix, he fell into chaos. He began buying pets from pet stores around the town and tried mutating them, since he was a retired scientist, to create humanoid figures. He succeeded in this, but they were mutant abominations of humanoid animals that were not meant to exist. When his wife found out about this, she soon divorced him, and all the pet stores in the area soon refused to give him any new ones. He was on the run from police and began even stealing the pets and animals from other people to corrupt into his experiments, even once having experimented on himself. He has perfected the radiated mutation that he uses to create these beings, longing for a being for the same role as Ben once had. He wants a son again, but these beings he creates are soulless, mindless, still controlled by animalistic impulses. And so, in fits of rage, he sends them looking for Ben, wanting his son back ever so dearly, and he even creates technology to control these beasts, although not having enough to create full machines, he implants them into his own skin, wires appearing wriggling under his flesh. He is what you would most likely call a cyborg, a corrupt one who creates unethical experiments simply from his desire to finally want a son again. Thank you all for watching this episode. I get that some of the stories in this got a bit dark, but that's kind of the point. Some of these aren't set in stone, but I think most of these are what I'll go with. I obviously haven't touched on some of the big villains, like, Vilgax and, the Forever King and stuff, but I think I will get to them eventually. But most likely, the next episode to come in Ben 10 Alpha will be more like the original episode, where I tell a story in the world, not just design villains for it.